Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm in the workshop today and I'm going to fit a oil pressure gauge onto my Dyna Fat Bob, my Harley-Davidson Dyna Fat Bob. It's a relatively simple job, straightforward job, but I thought I'd video the process in case that's useful to somebody else, and I guess if you're watching it then maybe it is useful to you. So the gauge that I bought is a Drag Specialities gauge. I bought that from HogParts here in the UK. They're a great supplier. I'm totally unaffiliated with them, by the way, but great supplier of aftermarket parts for Harley-Davidson, so I buy quite a bit of stuff from them. And this gauge that I've bought is one of the type that mounts up here onto the rocker cover, so it's quite a nice location. Is that as you know, as well as being useful having the oil pressure gauge there, I think they look quite cool as well, so that's why I'm going to fit it. Bit of a farkle. Let's get on with the job. This is the items that you get in the kit. So there's the oil pressure gauge, of course, quite nice. It's fluid filled, you know, stop it vibrating. You get this mounting plate which fastens on the right hand side of the bike on the rocker cover of the rear cylinder. This then assembles. This is the plate that goes and holds the oil pressure gauge. That then goes in there like that, assembles together like that. You then get a pipe which is long enough to run from the oil pressure switch, which is at the front of the engine, the front right hand side of the engine, just behind the exhaust, which I'll show you in a moment. That's long enough to run route up to where you've got this gauge located. Then you've got some pipe fittings here to secure the pipe at each end, and this important bit here, which is like this T-junction nut. So you remove the oil pressure switch, replace it with this. The oil pressure switch then fits back in the end of here, and then the pipe outlet up to your gauge goes there. So that's the adapter that you need. Now I bought this as a kit. You don't have to buy a kit because you can just buy an adapter and buy a cheap gauge and fit it wherever you like. I used to have one on an older Harley I had just mounted down on the crankcase, but I like the idea of putting it up there on the cylinder head. So first of all, I'm going to assemble this and the pipe, run the pipe down to the front, then I'll get the switch assembly sorted out. Whenever I start fitting something onto the Harley, I never know whether I'm going to need metric spanners or imperial spanners. If you own a Harley-Davidson, you have to be bilingual. You have to be able to speak both metric and imperial. In this case, these fasteners seem to be imperial. That's a 3/8 spanner I've got there. So this is the mounting plate, which will go that way around because it's going on the right-hand side of the bike. So drop this gauge into here, and then you can see it mounts on there. And then these are nuts with they're like nylon, not lock nuts. They've got the nylon inserts in place there, so you don't need any Loctite or anything with them. So I'll put those on loosely, and then I'll line up the gauge to where I want it, so it's straight once I've got those clamped down tightly. Just do them loose first, and then I can still move the gauge around. Right, so I think that's about straight. Obviously you can always adjust it later, but that looks good to me. That'll be straight up. So I'll just pinch those down so that they're tight. And then I'm going to connect the pipe onto this. So first of all, I need to do the pipe end connectors. So I'll zoom in actually so you can see easier. I've zoomed right in, so hopefully this is clear. So this goes on the end of the pipe and push that through the pipe, and then that tightens down onto here, and as it tightens down it will clamp the pipe and create a pressure seal on there. Oh, there we are, we're in focus. So you know, it's loose until you clamp it down, but once you clamp that down, it will create a pressure seal on that. So I'm just going to pinch this smaller one up now. So I need a bigger spanner, smaller spanner for the two, and pinch them up. This is a bit fiddly because you want to make sure that this pipe is fully inserted in there and that it doesn't slip out as you clamp up the joint. So the larger nut is a 9/16 and the smaller one is a 3/8. So I'm just going to try and hold that all in place. It's a bit fiddly. Let's say hold that all in place whilst I just pinch this up. So just make sure that that is staying fully in. There we are, and then pinch that up. That's good, that's caught now. Just nip it up a bit tighter. There we are. So that pipe is now secure, and that end. I can fasten that end now into the back of the gauge, mount that on the bike, and then run the pipe down to the front of the engine. This is where I'm going to mount the gauge, the dial, and this is on the right hand side of the rear cylinder on the rocker cover. So you need to remove these two bolts. You don't need to take the rocker cover off. Now it's obviously easier if you can get these out without having to remove the seat and the tank, but it's a bit tight to get in there. It's a 7/16 is that bolt, so just need to get in there with a suitable spanner or a socket and undo these. Knock this one off as well. Right, so that's the gauge mounted. Now when you put the rocker cover bolts back in, don't over tighten them. The torque setting is between 10 and 14 foot-pound, so very easy to over tighten them. You know, I went for 12 foot-pound for those. Okay, so now let's go to the switch at the front of the engine. The oil pressure switch is down here, the front of the engine, just behind the exhaust, and that makes it quite difficult to get to undo it. I'll move the camera around in a second so you can see better. So you know, to get easier access to it, you can obviously remove this front exhaust, but that makes what is a relatively easy job into a much bigger job. So with a bit of fiddling you can get in there and undo it. With the camera round the front here, you can see that switch quite clearly there, just tucked behind that front exhaust. So you just need to pull this electrical connector off here and then unscrew that switch. So it's quite tight to get in here, and it's really, you know, you need to get a pipe wrench on that or something. It's also quite difficult to light it for you to see, by the way. But anyway, I found that a 15/16 spanner will just fit on there, and it's not that tight, so you can see I'm just managing to turn it, and I don't get much of a turn with each. But you know, a bit of patience, and with the 15/16 spanner, you can. In fact, that might be loose enough to do it with my fingers now. You can get it undone. I've got the switch out now. Here it is. I didn't bother filming the whole process simply because my hand was in the way and you couldn't see. But it was a bit fiddly, took a bit of patience, because of where it was, I could only get about 1/8 of a turn at a time. And I was, say, it's not, you can see on the outside of it, it's not designed for a spanner, but I just found that this, sorry, wrong end, this 15/16 just fitted on it just nicely enough there. That just fitted on it nicely enough for me to be able to just turn on. It's not that tight. And then once I got it loose, I used a pipe wrench here, just on the end of it like this, to turn it to get it off. And it only really took about a turn and a half, and then it was loose enough to undo with my fingers. Okay, so that saved me having to take the exhaust off. Now this is the new T-junction which came with the kit. So the pressure switch will screw in the end of here like this, and then the end of the pipe will screw in the top. So I now need to screw this part into the hole in the front of the engine where the pressure switch came out, and I need to leave it with this bit oriented straight upwards so that this will fit in. And I'm going to thread lock this in with some red thread lock. Right, hopefully you can see that. That's some red thread lock on both the parts. I'm going to pop them back on the bike. Right, that's installed. So I've got that new T-junction in. I've got the pressure switch back on the end of it there, and the electrical connection back on it. And then you can see I've got the line screwed in the top there, which will then run up to the gauge. Now I need to route the cable, or the tube, up to the where I've mounted the pressure gauge. So that's the tube mounted, so you can see I've got it up to the gauge there. I've got the heavy breather air intake on mine, so I just routed it underneath that. It sits nicely, it's all tucked out the way there, it's not going to catch on anything. Right, so that's the gauge installed. The only thing left to do now is to start the bike. I'm going to take it outside, start the bike, and just make sure I haven't got any oil leaks at all, particularly down where I've relocated the switch. But assuming no oil leaks, that was a very straightforward process. Even faffing around, moving my camera around and doing the filming, that took me less than an hour. And even though getting that switch off was a bit fiddly, you know, just trying to get in that gap, it only really took me about 5 minutes to get that off. So I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an hour it takes, something like that to complete the job. I didn't check exactly. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found it useful. Thanks very much for watching. Ride safe, see you soon. Bye.